Most of us, we think we know the story of the internet. It was this amazing idea, right? Born in a university lab, this utopian project to connect the entire world and share knowledge. But what if that origin story isn't just a little bit off? What if it's the complete opposite of the truth? The real history? Well, it's a lot darker, and it's way more relevant to our lives today than you could possibly imagine. So, this is the core argument from Yasha Levine's incredible book, Surveillance Valley. I mean, it's a bold claim, no doubt about it, but it just reframes everything we think we know about our digital world. The book basically argues that from its very first spark, the internet was never really about connection. It was about control. And yeah, that's the popular story, isn't it? This idea of a global village, a big digital campfire. We're always told it was this amazing tool for liberation. But to really understand the network we have today, we can't start in some garage in Silicon Valley. Nope, we have to go somewhere else entirely. We have to start in the jungles of Vietnam. Because the fundamental DNA of the internet, it wasn't coded for collaboration. It was engineered for a very, very specific type of warfare. The key idea here is something called counterinsurgency. Now, this is not about tank battles or dogfights. It's a high-tech psychological war. The whole goal is to map, monitor, and manage entire societies, to snuff out a rebellion before it can even get started. And to do that, you need one thing more than anything else: data. A whole lot of data. You can actually see this direct line, this domino effect. So the Soviets launched Sputnik, which totally shocks the US, leading the Pentagon to create ARPA, its wild-eyed research wing. ARPA then immediately pivots to the war in Vietnam, which creates a totally new problem. How on earth do you manage all the intelligence you're gathering? And their answer was to start throwing money at computer research. And listen, this wasn't some theoretical project. ARPA's work was brutally real. They pioneered these crazy projects like Igloo White, which was this massive sensor network just dropped right into the jungle. And these little devices could detect people moving, the heat from their bodies. They could even detect the chemicals in their urine. Yeah, you heard that right. All of this data was then fed back to a central computer, which then directed bombers to the target. This was literally a war being fought with data points and algorithms. This quote, it just says it all, doesn't it? The vision wasn't just to fight an enemy. It was to create a totally transparent battlefield where every single movement could be tracked and targeted in real time. A world with absolutely no secrets from the watcher. But this high-tech war, it created a crisis. ARPA's sensors and its spies and its studies were producing this unbelievable flood of information. They were quite literally drowning in their own intelligence. So this is the crucial point. The ARPANET, which is the direct ancestor of our internet, wasn't born from some noble desire to connect academics. No, it was a direct military solution to a military data processing problem. The question was, how do you connect all your different computers that are holding all this battlefield data so you can analyze it fast enough to actually use it in a war? And the process was pretty methodical. You had JCR Licklider, an official at ARPA, who had the vision for this network. Then Larry Roberts was brought in to actually engineer the thing. And his team created the key piece of hardware, the IMP, which was, for all intents and purposes, the world's first router. It was a device built to solve the military's data sharing problem. Simple as that. What's so fascinating to me is that people knew what was happening from the very beginning. As ARPANET was being built on these university campuses, student protesters, they weren't fooled one bit. They saw this octoputter, as they called it, for exactly what it was: a centralized machine for surveillance and control with its tentacles reaching into every single corner of society. Okay, so that's the military origin story. But how did this war machine become the commercial internet of Google and Facebook and Amazon? Well, the answer lies in the pipeline that runs straight from the Pentagon to Palo Alto. The bridge, the thing that connected these two worlds, was the university system. The Pentagon, through ARPA, poured billions and billions of dollars into computer science programs at places like Stanford. And what that did was create a whole generation of researchers and engineers who were trained on military projects, using military money to solve military problems. That ecosystem is what we now call Silicon Valley. And this connection isn't vague or, some fuzzy theory. It is startlingly direct. Google's world-changing PageRank algorithm That wasn't just some dorm room project. It was actually developed at Stanford within a research initiative funded by a whole group of intelligence agencies, including DARPA and the FBI. And their goal? To find a way to organize and index the massive chaotic mess of data that was the early web. I mean, when you put them side by side like this, the parallels are they're undeniable. The military's goal of total information awareness to predict what the enemy would do next became Google's business model, indexing the entire web to predict user behavior. The mission was exactly the same, it was just privatized. So, if the system itself is built for surveillance, what about the tools that promise to protect us? You know, the tools that activists and journalists rely on for their privacy? Well, this is where the story takes its final and maybe its most shocking turn. Let's talk about Tor. For a lot of people, it's the ultimate symbol of digital resistance, right? This anonymity network that lets you browse the web without being tracked. It's the tool Edward Snowden used. It's basically the cypherpunk dream of a world that's totally opaque to the state. Except it wasn't. Tor was invented, developed, and funded by the United States government. To be specific, the Naval Research Lab. Its primary purpose was never to protect dissidents from the government. It was to protect the government's own spies from being identified while they conducted covert operations online. So you've got this fundamental conflict, right? The dream was to use technology to make the individual invisible to power. The reality was that power built that exact same technology to make itself invisible while it operates. The tool of liberation and the tool of covert operations were one and the same thing. And that leaves us with a really, really unsettling question. When the architecture of control and the architecture of resistance come from the exact same place, it forces you to completely reconsider what freedom in a digital world really means, and whether, it ever truly existed at all.